So guys, what's going on? So guys, Carl Froch has come out and said that, you know, Canelo right now is going to be difficult to beat. He goes, the only guy that I can see beating someone like Canelo is Terence Crawford. Somebody with that kind of skill set. You know, Carl Froch might be right. Somebody that's been able to offset and got a lot of tricks and tools in the box. Someone like Terence Crawford could give Canelo a lot of trouble. Obviously, Carl Froch said that Terence Crawford's too small and he's a welterweight. He's not big enough to beat Canelo. But somebody with those type of skill sets, and unfortunately, there's no one really in those weight classes that has that kind of skill set. When I think about it, no one's as tricky, no one's as good, no one's as fast, no one's as good on their feet as a Terence Bud Crawford. So really, there's no one in the 160, 168, 175 division that I see as skilled as someone like Terence Crawford. I know a lot of you are going to say, well, Terence Crawford's resume is not that good. No, but Terence Crawford has a lot of tools to his game. He has a lot of skills. He's very fast to feet. Someone like that could cause Canelo a lot of trouble because he's very skillful. Unfortunately, there isn't really anybody there that has that kind of skill set, that has that kind of ability. And by the way, there's nothing to say that Canelo doesn't beat somebody with that kind of skill set, because Canelo is a complete fighter. He punches very hard to the body. He's a very big puncher, and he finds a way to land those big shots. He's very skilled, very, very skilled, Canelo. So even though someone like Crawford, who's very skillful and got a very thing, even if there's a bigger version of Crawford, I don't know whether that would beat Canelo right now. I just don't know, because like I said, Canelo was so good at breaking people down. But it would be interesting. Like a lot of people mention Andre Ward. And that would have been a good fight, actually. That would have been a great fight. Now, Andre Ward was a very, very good fighter. He was a bit like Mayweather in the sense the way he used to neutralize guys, and he was quite not the most exciting fighter to watch, but he was a very, very good fighter, technically very sound, very good defensively as well, very hard to hit, and he was offensively very good as well, Andre Ward. Not the most exciting fight. He used to hold a lot, and it wasn't the most pretty fighter to watch. If you're looking for wars and stuff, he wasn't the best guy to be watching, because a lot of his fights he won quite comfortably, with his superior boxing skills, really. And listen, the game is about about not being hit, and hit and not being hit. That's the purpose. That's basically boxing. Is that your aim is to hit the guy and not get hit yourself. And the longer you last in the sport, if you follow that motto. So I think Andre Ward was brilliant at what he used to do, and I actually think someone like that would have been a problem for Canelo. And I actually think that the Andre Ward fight, see, a lot of people, and I know I brought Crawford up at the start, but really the reason why I wanted to do this video is because about Andre Ward, because I think, yes, Crawford has got a very good skill set, but I think Andre Ward was also a lot more proven than Crawford. And Andre Ward is obviously a guy that I believe that in around those weight classes, if people talk about, Froch said, or maybe Crawford, but it's kind of funny he didn't mention Andre Ward to come out and maybe fight someone like, because Andre Ward's not that old. I don't think it would be a good idea for Andre Ward to fight Canelo. I don't think it would be a good idea for Andre Ward to come out of retirement and fight someone like Canelo Alvarez. I don't think Andre Ward would be able to beat someone like Canelo now, because one thing I saw with Andre Ward when he fought Kovalev, I thought he struggled in the first fight. I actually had Ward losing that fight. The second fight, Ward came back and managed to make the adjustments and beat Kovalev. But that was Kovalev, I think, was kind of head sliding past his best. Canelo right now, for me, is a more complete fighter than Kovalev. I think he punches very hard. I think he goes down to the body. Now, Andre Ward said that, I have no interest in coming back out of retirement to fight Canelo Alvarez. But he goes, at the end of the day, I am a fighter at heart. And Canelo can definitely talk me into a fight. Now, Canelo's not the type. The reason why I don't think this fight happens is because Canelo's not the type to call Andre Ward out. Canelo's a guy that's very, very wealthy, made a shed load of money, right? He doesn't need anybody. Canelo Alvarez doesn't need anybody. And neither does Ward, because Ward's a very wealthy man as well. And he's got a great job commentating now, calling fights. So Andre Ward doesn't need to come back and fight Canelo either. But it would be a huge payday, and probably the biggest payday of Andre Ward's career by a mile, right? And it would be a massive fight. It'd be a big legacy fight. And you'd probably say it'd be the biggest name on his resume. Definitely be the big, if he was able to beat Canelo, it would be one of the biggest names on his resume. However, I think Andre Ward's too intelligent to come back, especially the fact that he's not fought since 2017. And listen, the thing is with Andre Ward retired young, and he retired on top, but not just retired on top, he retired very early. See, there's some people that retire on top, but it's their time to go, It's their time to finish. You could say Carl Froch, for example, although he retired when he beat George Groves and he went out on top, for me, it was his time to go. I think he was at the end of his career. I think with Andre Ward could have still gone on. Andre Ward could have still gone on. And he decided, not to, which was quite surprising at the time, because like I said, he was on top. He was a top level fighter. So it was surprising to me that he decided to, retire. When he retired after two wins against Kovalev, he decided to retire, which was quite surprising. But for me, he probably didn't see it. He didn't see any challenge out there. There was no one out there that really interested in him. There was no one out there that really got the juices flowing for him. However, there is a guy out there now in Canelo Alvarez, and I'm pretty sure that fight would get his juices flowing. However, now Andre Ward would be looking at it and thinking, although he's a fighter at heart, he will be looking at it and there will be doubt there because he hasn't fought for a very long time. And Canelo's really good. Like I said, even in Andre Ward's prime, that would be by far the best opponent that Andre would be getting in the ring with. Who's the best guy that Andre Ward beat? Kovalev. And although I think Kovalev would have beaten Canelo in his prime, I don't even know whether Andre Ward fought a prime Kovalev. And let's not forget, the first fight, I feel like Kovalev beat Ward. So, for me personally, I don't think it would be a good move for Andre Ward to come out of retirement. Because I would favor Canelo heavily. And even in Andre Ward's prime, I think it would have been a very good fight. I would have favored Ward slightly, but on points. But it would have been, for me, a nip and tuck fight. It wouldn't have been the Canelo now, nobody in history can just whitewash him. Nobody, because Canelo's really good. Really, really good. Really, really good. He's a very, very good boxer. He goes to the body very well. He punches very hard. So if he catches you, he's going to hurt you. Every punch is, like I said, very, very hard. He doesn't waste a lot of shots. He's a complete fighter now, Canelo. So for me, he would be a test or hard fight for anybody out there. I don't think it would be a good move for Andre Ward to come out of retirement now. But like he said, he's a fighter at the end of the day. And listen, when someone throws 40, 50 million at you, or 20, 30 million, because that would be Ward's highest payday, then Ward could be tempted back. Because let's be honest, although Ward was a good fighter and he, in the end, made a lot of money, he wasn't the most appreciated fighter. And he wasn't a guy that made ridiculous money throughout his career. He never made 40. I don't think he made silly money. There's a difference between making the money that I think Ward made and like a Canelo makes, or what Mayweather made, or even a Pacquiao made. I don't think Ward was on that level because, like I said, he didn't have the fan base. He didn't have the pay-per-view appeal. He didn't have the drawing power that some of these other guys do. And that's why, like Canelo, for example, making the money that he's making, I don't think Andre Ward made that kind of money because Andre Ward wasn't, like I said, commercially as big as Canelo. He didn't have the drawing power of a Canelo. So could he be tempted back for 30 million or 35 million? Possibly. because I believe that that fight would be massive. So maybe Andre Ward could be tempted back. And like I said, Andre Ward is not that old. He's not that old. Well, I'm pretty sure Andre Ward must be about 36, 37 probably. I'll have to check it, but I don't think he's that old. So even though he'd be coming back, he wouldn't be that old. And someone like Andre Ward looks to me like he keeps himself in shape. He's in good condition. So Andre Ward to me is not even, he's not out of shape. He's in good shape. So for me, Andre Ward could definitely come back. I just don't think it would be a wise thing for him to do. And it would be very risky right now because like I said, Canelo's got the bit between his teeth. And I think it'd be very difficult for anybody right now to beat Canelo. And like I said, that's the kind of fight where you need to be at your best. And if you're not at your best, there's a great chance you get beat against someone like Canelo. And even on Virgil Hunter said that, you know, I would favor Ward in his prime. But obviously, it's a very, very difficult fight. It's not an easy fight. And he understands that. That would be Ward's hardest fight throughout his whole career, without question. Because for me, Canelo's a more complete fighter than Kovalev. So that would be a very, very difficult fight for Andre Ward. And right now, after, you know, being out the ring for as long as he has and not fighting for as long as he had, and obviously being old and inactive, you know, you would have to say that Canelo would be a favorite in that fight. He'd be a favorite in that fight because, like, let's be honest, let's not forget, in the first Kovalev fight, Ward was hurt by Kovalev, and Canelo has the kind of power to hurt Andre Ward. But like I said, Andre Ward is a very, very good boxer. He's a master. The problem is, it's just that we just don't know what Andre Ward would have left. So I actually think Andre Ward could be tempted back because of the reasons I mentioned, because of the fact that he hasn't made the kind of money like Canelo and those guys. And in a fight with Canelo, that would be such a big fight where Andre Ward may be making 20, 25, 30 million possibly. Because he didn't have a dance partner like Canelo. I know the Kovalev fight, but the Kovalev fight, he made a lot of money from the Kovalev fight. Don't get it. He made a lot of money. But again, from what I reports for, it weren't anywhere near the Canelo or Mayweather bracket. And actually on pay-per-view, the fight didn't even do that well. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of talk about that when that fight happened, that pay-per-view wise, it didn't do that great. So Andre Ward wasn't a pay-per-view star. And that's probably down to the fact that he didn't really have a dance partner. A lot of his fights were quite boring, quite one-sided, where he used to dominate, really. And he won quite comfortably. A lot of the guys at the super middleweight division, he dominated and won quite comfortably because he was that good. I remember his fight with Froch. It was an easy win for Andre Ward. He won quite comfortably. He really, for me, dominated that fight. And he dominated a lot of fights like that because he was very skillful. So for me personally, I think Ward coming back now to fight someone like Canelo, I don't think it would be a good move. But then having said that, like I said, money talks. When you're being offered a serious amount of money and there's a smaller guy that you think you could outbox, who you know that you would have beaten, most likely Andre Ward's very confident that he would have beaten Canelo in his prime. He is being asked a lot of questions about Canelo now. The only way that fight happens if Canelo starts calling him out, which Canelo's not going to do. See, if it was somebody else that needed dance partners, Canelo can fight anybody and make a lot of money. So Canelo's not going to be calling Andre Ward out. That's just not in Canelo's character for me. It's not in Canelo's character to call out Andre Ward. I think if he would, I think there would be a chance of Andre Ward trying to maybe bite him. But I just don't think Canelo's going to be calling out. And I don't think Andre Ward is looking to come out to fight Canelo either. So I can't see that fight happening. But it would be a fight that would interest a lot of fans. And a lot of fans would like to see it. And actually, I've seen a lot of fans starting to talk about it already. But I just don't see that being practical. I don't see that fight happening because of the reasons I mentioned. I think Andre Ward knows that that would be a very risky fight. And he's too intelligent for me to take that risk right now. At the age he's at, being as inactive as he's been, I can't see him doing it. I can't see him coming back. But then again, like he said, I'm a fighter at heart. So if Canelo may be able to talk me into it, He is a fighter at heart at the end of the day. But let's see, man. Let's see what happens. Let's see if anything develops from this. But leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think, guys. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.